We're here again. Of course, I'm Adam.
I'm Johnny.
This is
Cam.
This is Cam, a friend of ours. Hold on, let me turn those crosshairs off on your face.
I have crosshairs on my face.
You have crosshairs on your face.
Walking target. That's how it happens when you have the.
There we go. All better. Hey, but we got a great show for you. I really hope you enjoy it. This is OmEn. All right. So, again, this is a friend of ours, Cam. We've actually known him for a little bit. Very interesting person, though. Knows a lot about a lot of different subjects. But we actually have a similar interest, right? I have actually, all right. I went to college for business, but I didn't really take any of my business courses. I didn't complete. I took socio and paleoanthropology, right? And in grade school, I took Egyptology, which I really don't even like that terminology because it's far bigger to me with the ancient cultures. But we have a similar interest when it comes to ancient Sumeria.
I know a little about ancient Sumeria, so this is your all's conversation. I'll chime in when I know something.
Right.
Or if I have a question.
So I feel it. I feel it. I mean, a lot of these things we need to understand the history of where we've come from, the things we've been through, and so we can continue and learn and grow and move
ancient
forward.
Sumerian, like the oldest that we know of so far.
They were one of the first, if not the first, to create written language.
I know cuneiform.
Very, very rudimentary, but it was, a huge step forward in our progress as a.
Well, yeah, they created cuneiform, which is the first forms that we know of writing, other than people just drawing pictures. And
no, we've actually, believe it or not, we found that a lot of glyphs from inside caves actually transcend boundaries and are used around the world. So we actually believe now that there is a Paleolithic written language of sorts. It's probably even more simplified. This is the symbol for horses here, or something along that line.
It's kind of like this.
A form of symbolism.
How ancient Egyptian looks like fucking pictures, okay? Think of it like this. Today, people text a lot more, which is odd to me because I thought we got phones to get out of the Morse code era and shit.
But at the same time, you can express... But you just hit that thing. You can express so much through simple symbolism.
Yeah, but like I was going to say, because how people go from the text messaging... They use emojis, which are little pictures, to say a lot to them now.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, I just think it's, kind of the same concept in a way. In a way, it's making the language easier to comprehend by a picture, but in a way, it's also dumbing down the society because then they're back to the way the kings and queens used to do it is the peasants didn't have schools and shit they could go to, so a lot of them couldn't read and they had to know things by pictures.
See, it's actually a lot more complex than that. Written language in ancient Egypt was part of their religion. The scribes were highly valued people because they were the people that could pass information on to future generations, or even just across great distances. So, using their language, see the thing about the English language, and I'm sure a lot of other languages, is they have a lot of complex, emotional, expressive connotations to the different ways you use the language.
Yeah.
Where then it was simple. This is what it is, maybe not so simple, but it gives you a general idea. But in ancient Sumeria, where they used cuneiform, it actually was. To me, it reminds me of like an archaic Asiatic language. The way it was done with like a simple tool that just poked into the clay, but it made shapes.
Like a stamp almost.
No, it was like if you
Sort
took
of,
a
but
screwdriver.
you do it into wet clay
Take-
and then harden it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take it like a screwdriver, except for it's thicker on one end. But just a general idea. Here's a screwdriver and some Play-Doh, and you just stick it in and pull it out instead of writing, drawing, and curves and stuff like we do now. They just stick it in, put it out to make certain shapes. And Asiatic languages like China and Chinese and Japanese, where they use drawn lines to make shapes. Real similar concept to me. Just viewing it from outside.
Different perspective.
Right.
Originally, it was mostly just to keep tabs on a growing. It's hard to say where they actually became more like city-like or what have you. But whenever it got to the point where one man couldn't keep up with this, because back in the time, everything was organized and taken care of by whoever was in charge at the time. And at some point they were like, "Oh, God, kings, this and that," but they needed some way to keep up with all this stuff. So originally, it was just like tally marks. It was just ways of keeping up. It's a little, it eventually conformed to get more pictorial, I guess, eventually, and then evolved into.
I could completely see that. You start off, if you've got to count things, you got this stick, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and put it in clay. Then eventually you start doing like an asterisk or something like that, and it's like, hey, this means look here first. And now you've got your first symbol.
A lot of people were looking into it originally. It's like, oh, I wonder what kind of stories people told back then. And it's like, there are really brilliant stories. One of the oldest, one of my favorites, actually, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Epic
But,
of Gilgamesh is
I've
awesome.
read about it. I mean, I've heard
Originally,
about it,
it
but
was
I've
all
never actually
quite
read
boring,
it.
really. It was just people keeping up with their storage and what they had, what they were giving to whom.
And then law, as they say, law was handed down. Kingship was handed down in Kush. You have Hammurabi. I believe
Hammurabi's law,
law.
he was a very brilliant, ahead of his time leader.
And the laws were so simple, but
still held this day in some places.
But life was a lot simpler back then too.
It really was.
But it seems like when you say life was simpler back then, it was, but at the same time, life was a lot more fleeting and harder because you could die at a very young age from just about anything.
See, you're right. It's simpler because we didn't have all these tech devices that we try to keep up with nowadays, but at the same time, it was harder. You actually had to worry about predatory animals back then. You had to worry about diseases, and there was no ambulance on call to
and
get you.
If you broke a fucking bone, you more than likely were dying.
Unless you were with some people that could get you somewhere.
And even then, half the time, most of them couldn't help you.
On the topic of technology, though, it's very interesting to think how quickly, like, I'm not going to say yay or nay on either one. It could have been aliens or whatever who built the pyramids. It could not have been. But
exactly,
a lot of people do just jump straight to it had to been aliens. There's no way that people that ancient of civilization could have figured out how to do this.
No, they could have.
But one thing a lot of people don't take into account is skilled labor goes down as machines do more and more, and people are forgetting techniques that have been handed down and used, and that kind of goes into another thing that's been interesting that's been found out throughout the world, all through ancient civilizations. All the ancient civilizations, mostly the ones like talk about a great flood that happened, this or that. Mm-hmm. They also, you find a lot of the markings within their pictographs, whatever you want to call them, of this particular type of tree grows flowers, DMT.
Oh, you're talking about the acacia. The acacia tree
actually seem to have. There's more proof of psychosomatics having an effect towards our evolution to our modern day presence than there are, of aliens. And that's saying something because there's a lot of stuff leaning towards it could have been aliens as well.
Now, it can go a lot of different ways. All right, I can only look at the facts and say I don't know. but there are several things that say something isn't right. All right, I know us as a species jumped from Homo erectus to Homo sapien. We skipped about 1 million years of evolution. At the same time, the ancient Sumerians say that the Anunnaki mixed our genetics with theirs. Now, do I say the Anunnaki, the Dengir, were aliens, or were they a different Homo sapien, or not a different hominid species that was already here on Earth? Like, all right, I'll give you a scenario. Russia, at one time, was trying to make super soldiers by crossbreeding humans with chimpanzees and orangutans, right? Now, the stories of the Anunnaki say that they crossbred their genetics with a primitive, hairy hominid, more or less, that was similar enough to them that their genetics would cross and make a primitive worker. Could it be that now, along that same lines, we have found like clay figurines in million-year-old mineral deposits. We have found petrified tools. We have found metal that shouldn't have existed in the years in the mineral deposits we found it in. We found an aluminum alloy only could be like a foot off of something, right off of a aircraft or something like that, a platform foot, and an aluminum alloy that we've only recently discovered, but it's already fully formed and made and machined.
Well, in cases like that, that would another train of thought you to be nice and entertaining. That would it have been aliens, or could it have just been some sort of freak cause of nature wormhole effect?
There
Something
you
like
go.
Donnie Darko.
We honestly don't know. It could be dimensional. It could be aliens. It could honestly be that there was another higher species on Earth before us that created us to be a primitive worker.
Have you actually looked into the original ancient Sumerian belief system, their dogma?
Oh, completely. I love it.
There's this one bit I read about, and actually also watched a video tour about it. It was ancient Sumerians' belief looked at under the as archaeological viewpoint, and it actually all their gods and goddesses kind of just were based on the planets in the sky, and in their original story there was no Earth. Instead, there was Tamiat, and Tamiat was not at.
You're talking the Enuma Elish now.
Did what?
The Enuma Elish.
See, I'm kind of
that's the story of the creation of our solar system, yes. And that's crazy. They actually have a story. Now they call them gods, but it's the creation of our solar system, and it explains everything perfectly and where everything sits. There's been clay tablets that give directions to Earth from outside the solar system as the 7th planet in instead of the third planet out.
From the sun.
Yeah, they call it the 7th planet in, right? We have found in times when they did clay square tablets, this one was round and has circles in it, and it has directions on how to get here from outside of our solar system.
Yeah, and like the part I thought really was most beautiful was how it explained the possibility of having an asteroid belt.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Tiamat. Nothing in science has really produced that. We got something in religion based upon like back. This is like centuries and centuries told down before they actually wound up writing it.
Uh-huh.
And like it's just really interesting how intricate they,
Here's something really interesting, right? Tiamat, the planet they talk about, was supposed to be mostly water.
Yes.
Right? Almost all water, and it was hit by another celestial body and knocked into the current orbit. It became Earth and left the asteroid belt, and the moon, either or, is either Marduk pulled from the rogue body, or pulled out of and coalesced from debris from the Earth, one or the other.
Actually, my personal theory on it is our moon is actually one of the remaining moons of the planet that crashed into Tamiya. Earth is the smaller portion that broke off in half because in the story it says that Marduk came back around and kept coming back and it's happened like 3 or 4 times around, and it would explain how all the asteroids made it. That's just the large
The
portion
comets,
of
the large orbits of the comets and asteroids.
and knocking the northern part of the smaller half into the orbit that currently is Earth. And in the story, it talks that Marduk sent one of his officers, officials, or I forget what the actual terminology was in the story, to always guard what was left of her. And it could be said that would be the moon.
That's a good possibility.
But I still like the theory that the moon is hollow. I don't think
That's
that it
scary.
is, but at the same time,
Well, they actually hit it with something and it rang like a bell. That doesn't necessarily mean it's completely hollow, but it has a hollowness to it. Whether it's cavities formed from old volcanoes,
Yeah, it
that's
could
a
be like
possibility.
Mars, where
It
it
could
was
be
once
the dead
had
core.
a magnetic core and then got hit hard enough that it lost its entire iron core.
I could see that, but I also think too, like, think about this. Remember in The Fifth Element when she stopped that planet before it, or whatever it was that was coming right at Earth, and she stopped it, and it was kind of in almost the same orbit and kind of reminded you of the moon.
Mm.
So what if something like that would happen? Like it was basically
Technically, the moon gets a little bit further away from Earth, like every 100 years or so.
What if we have been a high technology society many times in the past, right? And we keep not getting knocked down to square zero.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Earth was, as I talked about, it's much warmer.
It kind of reminds me of this anime I watched called Gurren Lagann.
Warm.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
It kind of reminds me of this anime I watched, Gurren Lagann. They kept the people of Earth down to where there was only like 100,000 of them left, and they wouldn't let the numbers go over that at all because once there became 1,000,000 people on Earth again, the basically aliens or whatever they were would come and fucking destroy them all. So this one alien had to stay behind and was making sure that the numbers never went over a certain amount. And then humans rebelled and killed him off, and then said, "Screw it to the other aliens, bring it on." But it was pretty
That's
cool.
fucked up.
Definitely.
That's fucked up because we got the Georgia Guidestone saying that there's a population limit, right?
And we're well over the population limit, I believe.
Yeah, and that they're... it's crazy. But what if all that's true? I mean, all of a sudden we have a Space Force, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden they've released information that UFOs are real. They said they've recovered a craft not of this world.
On that or something new.
But nobody's paying attention. Nobody's caring. Everybody just said the government just said UFOs are real. They just released a documentary where they're showing the materials recovered from these high technology flying crafts, right? And nobody's saying anything because everybody's worried. COVID this, COVID that.
Fear.
Oh.
Yeah, I love the puppet theater.
But aliens are real. We have this stuff from their crafts. All right. Now, Space Force doesn't sound so funny, does it?
Nope. It didn't sound funny before, but at the same time,
a lot of people thought
I ain't gonna lie. I watched it on Netflix. The show Space Force.
Oh yeah, but that's a comedy. Yeah,
I know, but it was actually had a lot of decent facts.
But that's just it. Everybody was laughing, and I don't like to get political on this, but this one to me was just stupid. Everybody was laughing at Trump for wanting to make a Space Force, right?
Why?
Everybody was laughing at him because why would we need a Space Force? There's nothing out there. Blah blah blah. Whatever. That's just wasting money.
And if we don't get off this planet, we won't be out there either.
And now UFOs are real. And they were forced to admit, the Pentagon didn't want to tell us, they were legally forced to tell us, right?
From the Freedom of Information Act and other things, after so long it becomes it's declassified certain things.
And so UFOs are real. They have recovered crafts and materials from these crash sites and things like that, and they are reverse engineering. They do have what is it, the TR-31B. We do need a space force. We do need extraterrestrial military operations more than we needed on Earth.
We need a Master Chief
because we don't know. We need to be prepared for defense because we don't know. Unless we do know, like you just said.
Things, plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Right.
And in war, it's always, how does that saying go? Not for war itself. It's be a man of peace, but always be ready for war. Something like that.
Oh, yeah. Always be a man of peace, but always bring your sword. That was something along that line.
Something like that. It's like, be a peaceful person. Don't do this or that, But if war comes to you, be prepared for it.
It sometimes must needs. All right. This is one of my sayings, all right? If you go back to like Genesis, all right, we were given the knowledge of good and evil, and the words actually used aren't necessarily good and evil. They're closer to savory and unsavory. The detestable things and the tasteful things. That's closer to it, right? So we have gained the knowledge of the detestable and the tasteful things. Now, if we gain the wisdom, all right, if we eat from the tree of life, then we'll be like them. All right. Now, if you skip ahead to Proverbs, I hate that I'm getting biblical because I don't like to get religious on this. You know what I'm saying? But in the Bible, you skip ahead to Proverbs. Wisdom is the tree of life. So, if we have the knowledge of the tasteful and the detestable, the wisdom to use each one we have to. All right. Thou shalt not kill. If you don't kill, you don't live. Even if you're a vegetarian, you're taking the life of plants, right? And anybody can form their opinion or whatever, you're killing. No matter what you're saying, you're killing.
You're taking its potential energy.
Okay, so we have detestable things we have to do to survive, because we can't do good if we don't do these detestable things. Now, along that same lines would be like defending yourself. Defending yourself and hurting somebody who's trying to hurt you. Well, it's not good to hurt anybody, but you don't let them hurt you. Sometimes those detestable actions must be taken in your own defense to continue the perpetual movement of good forward.
Just do it swiftly.
Sometimes it's necessary. And that's the key. We have to be ready to defend ourselves. We want to live in these ideological social societies. The problem is we have to be able and ready to defend ourselves at all costs. Till we're at that point, it's all bad, I believe.
Star Trek, where are you? But even there was problems.
Well, there's always going to be problems.
Yeah.
Star Trek got signed up for a new TV series for Star Trek got signed up for the next 7 years.
Which one?
There's just a new Star Trek
Discovery
series coming out.
Most Star Trek series are usually 7 years long.
Time.
Right.
And they've all you have to look it up.
Discovery is pretty awesome for real.
Well, most every Star Wars series is always signed up for 7 seasons at least. Almost every Star Wars
Trek.
Did I say Star Wars?
Yeah, Star Trek. I meant Star Trek.
No, we were saying Star Trek. He said Star Wars.
I'm sorry, I messed up. But yeah, every Star Trek series has usually been signed up as for 7 seasons.
Right.
Star Trek was one of those older TV shows that broke a lot of racial and
it did. You're
a lot
right.
of racial
Captain Kirk.
boundaries.
Captain Kirk broke a lot of racial. I think he was the first interracial kiss on television.
They were.
Him and Uhura. Yeah.
Nichelle Nichols.
And that's awesome. That's awesome that they actually broke that barrier.
Yes.
And it took a nerd show to do that.
Right.
High five,
to
nerds.
the smart ones.
Video high five for the camera.
Yeah, like for real. I mean, Star Trek seems like it'd be a great fucking life, and it would be, but at the same time, your problems, if you think about it, are on a much larger scale then, because you're not just worried about your planet, you have to worry about the entire known universe that you are allies
you
with.
Step into a larger stage. So if you notice, they still had military. They still had military vessels. They were more military science vessels.
Yes, they were more for discovery, but they also had a means to defend
They
themselves.
had to be prepared for war at the same
Yes.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense to make that all in the same ship too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why,
especially with the ships that big.
Star Trek
Right.
was considered Navy, because the Navy goes in submarines. Going out in space on a spaceship would be just like being in a submarine.
That actually is quite interesting.
Yeah, but if you go to Star Wars, in contrast, it went with a more Air Force route.
Oh yes, yes and no, because I saw a lot of Marine in there. Oh, sorry, stormtroopers.
Yeah, this is like Navy.
Nah, Marines can shoot.
Well, no. See, here's the
Wait,
thing.
wait, get Starship Troopers.
We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, I have more to talk about on that too.
But that was straight Army. That was grunts.
Yeah, they were mostly grunts. The Air Force part were the ones that were in the ships flying them and up in space. The guys on the ground were just
that
grunts.
would have just been Army
infantry.
Air.
They were infantry.
The Army Air Corps. Actually, the Army has.
They do have their own little Air Corps, but if you really think about it, do you know why the Air Force was made?
Huh.
Because the Army used to be the Air Force.
Yes.
They basically turned them into their own branch.
Yes. Military forces, that's how they get them. They split. Military went to Army and Navy,
But the Air Force guys will even be on the Navy ships.
Navy has their own fighter pilots.
Really?
Yes. You can be a Navy fighter pilot. You can be an Army fighter pilot. You can be an Air Force fighter pilot. It's just
you can be a Space Force fighter pilot.
Their main use, like the Army, is mainly the ground guys.
Yeah, getting them to and from and shit.
Navy is mainly the water guys. Their fighters are usually aircraft launched.
Except for the SEALs.
The SEALs are almost a separate branch. They're Navy Special Forces, but the Marines started out as Navy Special Forces and became the Marines. You quit shaking the table.
Actually,
the cameras are going.
Sorry.
Starship Troopers.
Earthquake brought to you by Johnny on the Spot.
Oh my, Johnny Cakes.
I'm so bad.
But anyway, back to the Starship Troopers bit. There's actually an idea I heard off of it that I actually kind of like. When it comes to immigration, military service guarantees citizenship.
That is true.
I like that idea.
You think about it like this too.
On our local world scale, I don't like that idea.
I'm talking about like
military service.
After we was talking about Space Force and everything, if we continue on and going off with the actual like Starship Troopers, like a lot of you actually notice a lot of sci-fi, especially futuristic sci-fi. There, some of these people actually put quite a bit of that did not go as planned. But actually, quite a bit of thought in what they believe a futuristic society might look like, and they oftentimes you will find very good ideologies in some of these sci-fi futuristic places. What was Doctor Who is actually great for that as well. I'm a big Whovian.
Hoovian. You Hoover.
Hey,
Used
I
to
don't
be
really
Super
know
Who,
Doctor Who that well, but it
Uh,
sounds interesting. But I know there's so much of it that I couldn't watch it all.
Oh, that's definitely.
Right.
I grew up on Fourth Doctor Scarpy,
See,
watching on PBS 2 o'clock in the morning on weekends.
I remember one of them watching it, like you said, on public broadcast. Um, and then I've seen a couple of the new ones, but I don't know enough to actually
If
tell you.
you don't watch any other episode, there's one episode I would suggest that will let you know whether or not you want to watch it, because it pretty much throws like it'll do some episodes more serious and it'll do some episodes a little bit goofier, but this one episode, the 50th anniversary episode, the Day of the Doctor, it's basically a movie for how long they made it, but you get I'm gonna just say 4 doctors. You just not all of them are plain as day, and I don't want to ruin that. But you get 4 doctors. You get an amazing serious story. You still get the goofiness in it because the doctors meet up. They're insulting each other. It was like, what was I thinking during that regeneration?
Right.
It's and overall a very very good storyline, and that it puts a lot of what goes on Doctor Who because they tell their stories over episodes sometimes. Like they'll have you'll have like 3 episodes that might not seem like they have anything to do with anything. They'll have that just a little bit in it that will be
Connecting them.
that will connect the story overall up until the season finale. And I need to catch up. I haven't really watched it in a while. I'm back. Peter Capaldi, eyebrows. I really respect him. He was president of Doctor Who fan club before they gave him the part. Beautiful.
That's awesome.
But back to the whole ideas from futuristic, sci-fi shows. We could take more from fantasy style media than
Now,
what people realize.
You're exactly right. I want to add something into that. I got a book series I love. It's the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind. If you read none of the other books, you have to read. I believe it used to be book 6, but they've added some in there. Faith of the Fallen. It's an awesome, awesome ideological, social, philosophical view of society, and it's so freaking amazing and yet an entertaining story at the same time. And if you take into deep consideration what they're saying, then you look at the whole rest of the series. You can decide from that book if you'd actually like the series, but then you read the whole rest of the series, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's without giving away too much, the main character throughout pretty much the entire book is the slave of a witch in every way. He's her sex slave. He does her chores, whatever. He just has to do what she says because he's got some, what we're going to say is some sort of spellcraft, whatever.
Wonder where their author's head was.
But
Must have had some good.
they go to this city that's, and this is crazy. They're building it under a socialist structure and showing how the people are, and it's almost a Christian socialist structure. That's the crazy part. They tie religion into it, right? And it's you always do good for others and blah blah blah. You know what I'm saying? And most of the city turned into leeches, more or less. Well, you got to do good for me. And the city started looking like crap. Nobody fixed anything. But it's an amazing book. You actually have to read it. Highly recommend it.
Sounds like it.
Mm-hmm. I read that book first before I read the rest of the series, and I didn't even know what the rest of the series was, and it was just locked in.
I feel that's how it was when I read the Wizard of Earthsea books.
Right now.
Right.
Those were some badass ones about Ursula K. Le Guin.
Right.
Yeah. There was a Wizard of Earthsea. Then it was the Tombs of Atuan and something else. But hell, the first book alone caught your attention enough that, like, even if you didn't read the other ones, you kind of knew what was going on. They actually did a sci-fi version of the movie. Sci-fi did it, but they kind of booked all three of the books into one movie, which wasn't bad, but it kind of threw it off some because they left out a lot of details like that you only get by reading the book. And if they would have done it in more than one movie, they could have, put a little more of those details in there, would have made you feel for those characters a little bit more.
Right.
My opinion.
I feel it. I feel it.
But other than that, books were good. And the movie was actually pretty good. Like, I have to give sci-fi some credit. They did some good job on it. I just didn't like certain things that they changed in the movie. Like, because when you were a young child, you had a name. But when you reached your manhood or whatever, they gave you your true name. And your true name is what gives someone power, something power over you or over something if you know it. Well, someone gives you your true name, but everyone calls you some other name. Like the lead character, his true name is Ged, but everyone calls him Sparrowhawk. And his other wizard buddy in it, his true name, I'm trying to remember, what does he call him? I can't remember his buddy's true name. No, I remember his true name, but I don't remember what he called him. But his true name was like Estariol. It was really cool though, because like the wizards learned that if you know the true name of something, you have power over it.
Yes, but then why do you have a true name if you can't ever use it?
No, if it gets used on you, you lose power.
That's like, all right, here's your passcode. Don't give it out.
Exactly.
But can you use it on yourself?
I don't know how that would have worked in the book. I never read about that happening.
That's an interesting way to look at that.
Actually, though, no, wait. There was a part where he had to use his own name to defeat a creature that he had created years before by accident that was almost a mirror. It was somewhat of a mirror version of him.
To use it to create your mistakes.
And it would chase him around, like it would find him here and there and trying to kill him to take over him and become him.
Right.
And he basically, he didn't know its true name, couldn't figure it out. Well, in the final battle, he finally figured out its true name was the same as his because it was a mirror of him.
This was Earthsea?
Wizard of, it's called the Tales, I think the Tales of Earthsea, but the one with that I'm talking about was the first in the series, and it's called A Wizard of Earthsea because he's born, it talks about his life, him growing up, and then finding out that he knows how to use magic.
I saw a special on that was short-lived.
It wasn't. They had a movie that they did. It was like a 2-part movie, I think.
Oh, I thought it was miniseries.
I used to have it on. I had it on DVD, but I don't. I've lost it somewhere over the years.
See, talking about TV and adaptations, that book series I was talking about, The Sword of Truth, they did that. I guess it was Sci-Fi, which I don't remember who did it. It was awful, cheesy. The book series is like epic. Should have been done like.
Well, think about it like this:
Game of Thrones.
What if Lord of the Rings had not had a good budget to use? What if Lord of the Rings hadn't got to do what they want? Because Peter Jackson had it in his contract for the last year that he was trying to sell that as a 3-part movie. That if he didn't get to sell it in 2 days before his time limit would have ran out, it would have went back to the company that he had wrote it under. All the rights would have went to them, and they only wanted to do a 2-movie. They wanted all 3 of them put into 2 movies. He said, no, it needs to be 3. They wouldn't greenlight it, so he went out and found someone else that did. And I'm wanting to say it was Ted Turner, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Right.
Because Ted Turner, or whoever, if it was Ted Turner, literally said to him, you would have to do this in 3. If you did it in 2, it wouldn't be right.
Right.
It's like they would lose out so much information of you having to pick and choose everything. Because even in 3 movies, even as long as they are, you're still losing out on details from the books.
Yes,
right.
Definitely.
Definitely.
I do agree with Joe Rogan though. Yes, movies are better are better in ways than books because I can sit there and watch the story with my own eyes and see the things happening instead of sitting here trying to imagine
That's
them.
kind of like I
But
wish
trying
they
to
would create
imagine
this TV series
is like a
instead.
skill. I don't
I
have to
agree.
try.
I can try. I can imagine things left and right because I'll tell you what. There's some things I've seen in books that have been turned into movies that I'm sitting there like I never envisioned it going like that. But that's a good interpretation.
Right.
I like the way it is, but I would have done this or that. You know, that's basically you being a critic then because somebody else did the same idea you had. They just were able to do it before you.
Yeah, but you don't actually have to do the movies to tell stories to yourself.
Oh, no.
You have to be comfortable inside your own head. As
I'm
well.
always in my own head. It's pretty weird in there. What are we going on about now?
I don't know. We was talking about. Anyways, like so Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. I thought they did really well. They did cut out, but they did really well with the length of the story until they got to the end. The very end, they cut so far short, it was unreal, and it was awful.
The thing is, people didn't seem to understand.
The rest of the show was beautiful, awesome, epic.
But from what I understand, the way that the writer wrote it is the reason that he had it end the way it did was because what would have happened is when she became fully into power and everything, is she was already starting to show signs of tyranny and stuff.
No, the books are already written. She does die, but they changed like a whole thing that should have been hours long into 15 minutes.
I agree,
and it was horribly done.
But I know that I agree with you on that.
It was a storyline that
should have shown her looking more tyrannical at first because you think about it, she was pretty much willing to do anything in the story for power, even though she said she didn't want the power, but she somehow kept getting all the power, is because she showed the confidence to use that power. But she's already been able to use that power to do what she wants. Is she willing to give up some of that power once she's in that main spot? Because, I mean, I kind of see it from all angles. And it's mostly because I watched a little documentary on it, and the way they said it sounded way better than the way I'm doing it.
Right.
But, yeah. I mean, hell, I watched a documentary this morning on Dolly Parton.
So you like the docs, huh?
Yeah, sure.
You're a doc hawk?
Yeah, sure. Hey, sometimes the documentaries give me the information I need versus me trying to look.
I'm just clowning. I love documentaries. I love science, discovery. When I do, I haven't watched TV in so long.
I don't really watch that much, though.
Science and discovery and history were my favorite channels all around. I love information. I consider myself a perpetual student.
Or always, if you think you know everything, then you're a fucking idiot. That's all I'm saying. I'm sorry. I know the one constant in my life is that I know nothing. You know,
we got so far away from the original talk of this show, the ancient Sumerians.
Yeah, but we just keep going in. We keep changing topics.
I know, but we're just continuing and adapting and evolving from the original. Look how far it's gotten us. Look how far it's gotten us
species, right?
Just from hitting one thing, and we can expand upon it in so many ways. That's crazy.
Well, that's exactly back to what we were talking about in the ancient Sumerians, because they expanded on one thing and kept going and changing it and making it different until where we are today.
Well, that's actually what we do. I heard this talk recently, right? And this guy was like, what do humans as a species do? What is our purpose? Right? And every creature, worms, turns stuff, decomposing stuff into turd that becomes great dirt. You know what I'm saying? Certain bugs remove carcasses. Certain things are really just meant to be food for other creatures. What is humans' purpose?
Well, like you
have
just
to
said.
make your own.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, my bad. I firmly believe that you create your own purpose in life. That's what your life is about. Is creating your own purpose.
That's just it. Humans as a species purpose, not a singular purpose, but humans as a species purpose, we create. We create new things.
We also
that's our only thing we leave for the future is we create, we learn, we continue ideologically. Tongue twister, I guess. Right. Ideologically, to evolve and adapt and create. What other creature truly creates new things? I mean, now we're starting to see orangutans and chimpanzees that are starting to use tools. Are they just now hitting that early stone technology phase? But we create. And that's an amazing thing.
Well, seems pretty amazing. But if you think about it, in the circle of life, sometimes we're the main predator of the planet to help keep things in check. But then we also overcheck. Plus, even as a predator, eventually all predators die and go to become food for.
But we're not. We're not a predator.
Prey upon itself.
We're not a predator. We're kind of in balance, right?
We're a checks and balance system.
We're omnivores.
We're omnivores because we eat plants and meat.
Right, and we couldn't develop the high functioning brains that we have without the proteins from meat and fat, right? It doesn't. The grasses and stuff don't produce enough fuel for higher thought, but we need the vitamins from those to fully support every function of our body.
There was actually a bit I seen on Stephen Hawking at one point. I forget what the actual miniseries he did was, Into the Universe or something similar to that. But he pointed out what the difference between herbivores and carnivores were, and one of the main visual tell signs of the carnivore is eyes in front, herbivores eyes on side.
Right. But then you have things like the great apes, eyes on front, primarily herbivores, but they do
eat bugs and stuff, ants.
And the difference really is depth perception. Predators need better depth perception, and prey species need better area coverage.
Yes.
Now, that would be a better way to say it because prey species have their eyes on the side. Right?
It looks like how often I know this does happen when you look at how often do elephants get attacked? There's a lot of times that wild creatures will try, but what they have to do is they have to wait until one of them goes off by themselves. I wouldn't really consider, or like the hippo, I wouldn't consider a hippo a prey animal.
No, it's not normally a prey animal.
Herbivore.
See, an elephant is and was in history a prey animal. A hippo.
Yeah, I thought of a hippo. I was like, wait, this is a way better example. There's not very much that's going to try to prey on a hippo in the wild.
Right. I don't
know. They're herbivores. They have eyes on the sides of their heads.
Are their eyes really on the sides of their head?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see this because
they should have the weird square-like shaping around the pupils as well. I'm not 100% on that part though.
Looking up a hippo.
I mean, going into it, really, a whale is technically a mammal, and nothing's going to make it prey.
Actually, the hippo's eyes are they're actually all right. Where deer and stuff, their eyes are like this. The hippos are like this.
Actually, look up.
Predators are like
do
this.
Hippos eat fish?
Huh?
Do like that?
Fish are on the side. Pretty much all of them are on the side, but that's because of the streamline.
No. Do hippos eat fish? That might explain that a little bit better.
Mhm.
I was thinking they were predominantly herbivores, but if they're not, then that would defeat the purpose.
They're not. They're predominantly herbivores, but they do have. There are omnivores because they will eat meat. They will attack and shit like that. And a wild hippo attack.
Oh man, they're eating a zebra right there.
Oh
Yeah.
really? Oh wow. Okay. So that's
So you learned something new today.
right.
You gonna learn today.
Mostly
like
herbivorous. Mostly herbivores.
So they're omnivores. Omni.
They're just like humans.
All right, like okay, a dog is a carnivore, but it can digest some starch, right? A cat is what's known as a super carnivore. They can only eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the hippo is predominantly a herbivore, but apparently can digest some meat.
Oh.
And their closest relation is to a pig.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I probably should have put that two and two together before.
Woo, that's a big pig.
But does a hippo taste like pork?
Don't know, don't want to find out.
That could solve some pork shortages. We had bigger pigs. Just saying.
There ain't no pork shortage.
I know, that was a joke.
Yeah, their eyes are almost in a dog's position.
That's weird. I figured they were like strictly herbivores this whole time.
Look at this picture right here.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yep. Looks about like the ones I look at in Assassin's Creed when I kill them.
Video game violence is the way to go. Who's got the time in real life?
And that, I was going to say your predator and prey, that just made me have I had a crazy thought about this a while back, right? Your predator species, when they take down prey, usually it's scared, it's running, it's adrenalized, right? So I would say, affects them. They gorge themselves on raw meat and blood, and then they, you know what I'm saying? But
kind of like how when we
look
turkey.
how there's this conspiracy. We'll call it a conspiracy nowadays because I don't think there's actual factual evidence of it. How they're talking about people drinking adrenochrome blood after torturing children and shit like that.
That's what they were originally talking about. What was on not Epstein's Island, but probably was an island Epstein's. But I actually heard this and I completely forgot what they called it. But they were doing that for eternal youth or some shit.
Right. So when you drink adrenalized blood, your body does use that adrenochrome and creates an effect. You know what I'm saying? The same way as you were talking about DMT earlier. It's produced naturally in your body in certain amounts, but if you increase those amounts is when it creates the effect. So same thing with adrenochrome, right? Now, predator species, that's what they do. They eat scared animals. So the adrenochrome, what if that has the effect to create the predator species, right? It creates the personality, the embedded personality from chemical reaction, and this whole adrenochrome conspiracy, if people are really doing that, it's turning them into a predator species.
Hyper carnivore, more
towards.
I still believe that we're more a predator species because without meat, we would not have from biological level, we would not have evolved as quickly as we did without the meat.
Well, we are carnivore. We are omnivores. We eat a lot of meat, right? But we're big on humanely killed and blah blah blah. And if you're a hunter, or if you've ever eaten hunted meat, you taste
might
that
be gamey.
gamey flavor, right? But
You can beat the
if
gamey
you
out of
soak
with
it,
a hammer.
if you soak it in salt water, it pulls the blood out and you lose most of that gamey flavor. So what if that's exactly it and the blood is adrenalized and that's what gives it the gamey flavor?
I would imagine, like, from what your lead up there, I was actually thinking you were about to say the gamey stuff tastes better. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, it is something to think about. As a predator takes down its prey is scared, it's got all that pumping through its blood. And it can be like an addiction for the predator.
Right. Yep. Right. It can be like addiction. It was what creates the effect of becoming a predator. So it's not that we're carnivores, because we eat domesticated animals that are killed surprisingly without the fear and torture and run and chase to adrenalize their blood. So we're still not getting the predator effect. But then if we have people that are going for the adrenochrome, then they would be getting the predator effect, and it would be affecting their mentality the same way.
So maybe this is where the reptilian things is going into, because it's the right. You have three different portions of your brain. One's referred to as the reptilian part of your brain. It's not really of a reptile or anything. Just talking about its most basic primal function is self survival, which is hunting essentially. And quick reactions. It's if it's being more prevailing over the other two portions of your brain, because you need to have a good balance in all things, then it is more likely that they are acting more like what you say a reptile would act. As that's where the name say came from.
A reptile, if you're talking about like a Komodo dragon or something like that.
Yeah, something that's like, I think it's interesting. I had to. I'm not so sure I'm as big into hollow earth theory when it comes to reptiles.
Oh, we just lost a camera.
How long did we have?
Hold on. We still going. We have 56 minutes. I wonder if it lost battery power.
I think so. But we got 56 minutes.
Oh, battery low. All right, guys. We lost Cam. We lost the camera. he's still with us on sound. So, but I think it's actually a good time for us to call the show. We're just a couple minutes off. So
we're sorry about that.
We'll definitely
wanted to see me anyway.
We'll definitely have to have Cam back for future episodes. This was a nice conversation, and we hope you enjoy the show. I'm Adam.
I'm Johnny.
And Cam's invisible.
I'm a ghost.
I'm a ghost.
All right. It's great being there with y'all. Y'all have a great day.
Have a good night.